That's beautiful, Michael. Nice relaxation music. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see everybody here today. Some old friends, Suzanne and Johannes. Welcome to the frozen north. And we all envy you on Facebook, seeing the weather down there. Jeff and Carolyn, good to see you guys. Carolyn, glad you're over another hurdle. That's good. It's great. And as all of you know, my name is Tom Lotman. I've been here a long time. And just a reminder that we are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and to that we covenant to the principles on the back of your order of service. I've got a few announcements today. One that Suzanne had mentioned to me, just that this coming Monday on February 5th, some of you may recall that we had a presentation that Cheryl arranged from the Reuse Hub folks some months ago, and they're going to be at Maple Knoll on 10 a.m. at the Village Auditorium, and the presenter will be Brittany Gray. She's the Offsite Collections Coordinator, and she'll be talking about the Reuse Hub and how just about everything can be recycled. They've already taken in 200 tons of recycling since 2020, and they have really some interesting expansion plans. So if you're interested, Maple Knoll this coming Monday at 10 a.m. Also, I wanted to just mention some exciting times coming up here at the gathering at Northern Hills. Starting next week, we have a series, Meeting the Other, Bridging the Divide. It's a 6-session series that Ann has coordinated, and I'm blown away by the caliber of speakers that she's brought in. And it really is looking at, a world where we're so polarized and we're so tribal. It's how we bridge those divides and talk to each other about some pretty profound issues. So I think you're going to like it. It begins next week with the first session being Les Tacey presenting, and it'll kind of be a nice lead-in to this series. And then, let's see, and you'll see more information on the next 2 Sundays in your order of service. The Tuesday discussion group will be February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. And my suggested topic is, what are the things you like about Tom Lotman? I'm not sure that's going to fly, but who knows? So please join us. If you need the link or other questions, please contact Suzanne. Okay. Any other announcements from the floor that anybody would like to mention? I did hear from Betsy that Mark is doing well and that he has little or no pain, so that was all good to hear. Let's see, the opening words. And these are from the book Think Again by Adam Grant. Psychologist George Kelly observed that our beliefs are like a pair of reality goggles, or non-reality goggles, if you will. We use them to make sense of the world and navigate our surroundings. A threat to our opinions crack our goggles, leaving our vision blurred. It's only natural to put up a guard in response to this. And Kelly noticed that we become especially hostile when trying to defend opinions that we know deep down are false. Rather than trying on a different pair of goggles, we become mental contortionists, twisting and turning until we find an angle of vision that keeps our current view intact. You can't help but watch the news to understand exactly the words that he was talking about. And now, as we begin our service, I would like to call on my good friend Paul Miles to light the chalice.
Rise up.
And I'd like to welcome as well our Zoom visitors. Alan, do you mind pulling some folks up? Hi, Ruth, good to see you. Jack and Valerie and Bill and Betsy. Betsy, I'm so glad that Mark's progressing well. Glad you're here. Good. And I see we have other visitors that came in. Welcome. We appreciate your being here. Without arm twisting, but I guess it is kind of arm twisting. Would you mind introducing yourself so we can welcome you?
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and this is Dylan, and our children, Max and Hazel.
We're so glad you're here. Welcome. To make you feel like this is really bizarre, all of us for today's talk have oh, you got glasses. Okay.
They're ahead of you, Tom. Way ahead of you.
And you actually came in anyway. That's good. Great. Okay, let's begin the service with our opening hymn, Wake Now My Senses, number 298. Please stand as you're willing and able.
Stand and sing with me, guys. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work towards a planet transformed by our care.
Thank you all, and please remain standing for our unison affirmation.
We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children.
And now, if you'll be seated, and it's my pleasure to introduce somebody you all know well, Anne McCracken. Anne is one of the smartest people I've ever met. She has a PhD in gerontological nursing. She's a 2-time Fulbright scholar in Norway and Australia. And for 30 years, I've been the beneficiary of her wisdom and insight, even times when I don't particularly recall asking for her wisdom and insight. With that, putting on my glasses that looks more like the Blues Brothers, I want to introduce Anne McCracken.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who makes this service possible. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes people, like there's Cheryl, who's gone out to check her chicken noodle soup, I'm sure, and there's Alan, and there is Nada and the whole group who do the greeting, and Mel, who's always here to help with ushering, and Michael, who does the music, and you don't see Mark, but Mark's out in the office taking care of the financial things. So there's a lot of behind the scenes kind of things, and I just want to say thank you to all those people who make that happen. Okay. In the opening words, psychologist George Kelly observed that our beliefs are like a pair of reality goggles. And just to emphasize the point that we all see our world through our beliefs, through a filter, a pair of our unique utility glasses, please put on the glasses you were given. Please keep the glasses on until the talk is over. The glasses are like your beliefs. You were not born with them, you acquired them. Now, some of you may be seeing your world as yellow or purple or red or green or some other color quite different from your neighbor. Trumper. Describe a trumper. College educated or not, wealthy or not, likes snowflakes or not, more democratic or autocratic, good neighbor or not. Tom and I have a neighbor. One day she went to the mailbox and saw a car parked in our driveway. We were not at home. Two people she did not recognize had socks on their hands and were carrying one of our TV sets out to their car. She called out, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they replied, I imagine it deep and sinister, "Mind your own business." She turned and walked back to the house to call the police, but not before she memorized the license plate number. Later, she looked through the pictures at the police station and identified one of the people. She testified in court when they went to trial. Several months ago, when our blind and deaf dog wandered into the street, she pulled him to safety just before he was about to be hit. My across-the-street neighbor has a large flagpole in her yard with an American flag. She also has had Trump signs in her yard, and the online voter registration site lists her as a Republican. Much of this talk was inspired from reading the book Think Again by Adam Grant. Grant says that when we meet group members who defy a stereotype like my neighbor, our first instinct isn't to see them as exceptions, or as exemplars, and rethink the stereotype. It is to see them as exceptions and cling to our existing beliefs. In other words, we don't take off our glasses. We get out the duct tape and apply them more securely. Tom would be better at explaining the neurobiology of assumptions, opinions, beliefs, ideologies, etc. I am going to go along with Grant and say that they are cognitive tools we choose to use. And if we use them regularly, they become a part of our sense of self. In fact, we define ourselves in terms of them. Threatening them can trigger the amygdala and activate the fight or flight response. It is hard, but not impossible to change them. Moreover, if threatening our belief brings out the duct tape, this next phenomena, group polarization, brings out the super glue. We need to interact with people who share our beliefs. We tend to be with them, to assume their assumptions and opinions. In every human society, people seek belonging and status. We gain status by following the most prototypical, those with the most intense views. I think we see examples of that these days. Grant notes, we don't just identify with our own group, we disidentify with the other group, coming to define who we are by who we are not. We are not them. Good people see purple. Seeing green, yellow, red, etc. is bad. One of the passages in Think Again that struck me was this. A black man, Darrell Davis, was playing the piano in a piano lounge. Mr. Davis was the only person of color in the room. Later on, he has a drink with a man who reveals that he is a member of the KKK. Can you imagine the glasses that man wore? Mr. Davis asked the Klan member a compelling question that he has always wanted to ask. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Remember way back when in our philosophy classes, if you went to a Catholic college, you certainly had philosophy classes, all slightly different depending on whether you were in the Augustinian tribe, as I was at Villanova, or the Jesuits, as Tom was at Xavier and Loyola, or the Franciscans, or whatever. In any case, remember Kant and Martin Buber and the I, it, and the I, thou, who emphasized that we should always reach for the humanity in ourselves and others. Buber notes how I let the attitude of my soul come to life. That affects the world. Unfortunately, our default functioning mode, how we come to life, tends to be a binary bias. Our beliefs, our attitudes, our assumptions lead us to seek clarity and closure by simplifying a complex continuum into two categories, notes Grant. Examples abound: pro-life, pro-choice, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we get out of this state of calcified ideologies of binary bias? Grant suggests that we be humble enough to rethink our beliefs, our assumptions, our opinions, etc. Changing your mind, he said, doesn't make you a hypocrite or a flip-flopper. It means that you were open to learning. Moreover, he suggests that we begin to define ourselves in terms of what we value rather than what we believe. For example, rather than saying, I am a Democrat, I might say, I value social equity. Or I might say, I value living things. And my neighbor, the Trump supporter who risked her life to save my dog, would agree, I'm sure. Another way to escape binary bias is by seeing a range of perspectives on a given topic. For the next several weeks at GNH, we will be exploring some potentially binary topics. Instead of classifying the topics as either or, try to see what our speakers share as a complex continuum of choices, some that perhaps people on both sides of our psychologically constructed fences can agree on. Finally, we can find a way to dialogue with the person that we have dehumanized and perceive as the it. We can find a way back to seeing that person as the thou Kant suggests. He suggests that our identity, or our destiny, is to treat people as ends, not as means. Our destiny is to treat people as ends, not as means. In other words, not to use people to inflate our own egos. Our first UU principle tells us the same. Buber states that we are in the world not to be carried away by it, but to actualize it. He goes on to say, what it depends on is not whether I affirm or negate the world in my soul, but how I let the attitude of my soul toward the world come to life. Life that affects the world. He notes that actual life paths coming from very different attitudes can cross. So it isn't my soul in me that makes me whole, but letting my soul come to life in the world, a world of differing attitudes, a world in which I, by my attitudes, come to life. By that, I am a co-creator, making the world what it is. Which I take to mean it isn't the topic about who wins or who loses that is at stake here. My soul work is how I actualize myself when encountering the other, even when our beliefs differ. Getting to the thou may even be what Maslow meant when he put self-actualization at the apex of the pyramid. Perhaps self-actualization is soul work. Walter Kaufman, who translated my edition of the I and the thou and wrote a lengthy introduction, says, spirit is not in the I, but between the I and you. Spirit is between the I and the you. This gives the hymn Spirit of Life a whole new meaning for me, which says to me that this is more than do I choose strawberry or happy hippo ice cream, or do I look at the world through purple or red glasses. This is about some pretty important stuff. Grant in Think Again gives us some suggestions as to how we can dialogue on difficult issues. He notes that instead of telling others what you think, invite them to dance. Our focus is on learning and understanding. Learning and understanding. Learning and understanding, rather than arguing and persuading. Being UUs, our first inclination might be to overwhelm the person with rational arguments, especially those that support our beliefs. Stop. Our objective is not to be a logic bully, but to find common ground on the continuum of complex topics. Keep the dialogue focused on the topic, not on the worthiness of the person. According to Grant and our own life experience, our first instinct is to convince others by starting to talk. However, the most effective way to help others to open their minds is often to reflectively listen. Grant notes that listening well is more than a matter of talking less. It is a set of skills in asking and responding. It starts with showing interest in the other person's interest, rather than trying to judge their status or prove our own. Ask truly curious questions that don't have hidden agendas. Great listeners are more interested in making their audience look smart rather than themselves. If you do present information, remember the thou person is wearing their purple, red, or green lens, so ask permission. Because if you present information without permission, no one will listen. Ask, may I share some information on whatever it is, based on my experience? Evoke curiosity with respectful questions. Speaking of respectful questions, recently, because I couldn't get a $15 per person appointment to take my granddaughter to the Cat Cafe in Covington, You have to make appointments at the Cat Cafe days in advance, I found. We ended up going to the Roebling bookstore. There I discovered a catch of books by Wendell Berry. I now own 3 more. In the book Leavings, I read the following verse in the poem Questionnaire. Berry left me with an aha moment and what I found to be curious questions. Berry writes, state briefly the ideas, ideals, or hopes, the energy sources, the kinds of security for which you would kill a child. Name, please, the children whom you would be willing to kill. So I respectfully sent an email to my senators, noticing that by December 30th, the date of my emails, at least 33 children were killed by Hamas on October 7th, and others had been kidnapped and were in untenable situations. And nearly 9,000 had been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. I asked Senators Vance and Brown, could they please share with me our foreign policy objectives for which we would be willing to fund the killing of children? I also asked just whose children we are willing to kill. Although Senator Brown's office acknowledged that they had received my email and that they would get back to me soon, I am still waiting for an answer. There was no acknowledgement or response from Senator Vance. I value the lives of all children, and by our unison affirmation, we value the lives of all children. Over the next several weeks, we will be exploring a series Meeting the Other, Bridging the Divide. It will begin with Les Tacey telling us why this is very UU and how it is associated with our principles. Then we will explore several potential polarizing topics, which I hope that you will examine as complex continuums. We will end with an experiential session on listening skills. This may be easier than you think because it involves breakfast and our mouths may be full of pancakes, and so listening might be our only option. But now, back to these glasses. Have you noticed that when you first put them on, you were aware of wearing them and how they distorted the color of things? Then, after a while, their effect tends to disappear, and everything seems normal. Our beliefs, attitudes, assumptions, etc., are quite the same. They become a part of what we assume is normal or right, of who we are. Please take off your glasses if you wish. I would not use these glasses to protect your eyes from UV rays. They were far too cheap to be polarized. You might, however, set them someplace where you can see them to remind you that your beliefs are like colored glasses. That this day and every day you have the opportunity to take them off and reach for the humanity in yourself and others as you come to life, co-creating a soul world. Then these glasses will become priceless. Namaste.
Okay, we have some time for congregational feedback. Any thoughts from anyone? Johannes.
Thank you. Wonderful, very informative presentation. I enjoyed. I have been thinking and trying to deal with when you mention how many children are we willing to kill, I'm thinking about gun violence and a recent survey that pointed out that the leading cause of death among children and teenagers is gun violence. and I'm at loss to try to find somebody that can explain why that is worth it.
That is a question I think we'd all like an answer to, Johannes. Yes. Other thoughts? You know, one of the things that occurred to me and in listening to you was, I think, and I was really glad you kind of brought up the question of us as Unitarian Universalists, because I think often we tend to kid ourselves that the lenses that we have on are the clear lenses. These are the lenses that are clear because of our focus on science, our focus on rationality, and that other people's lenses are tinted. And when we say tinted, we also mean tainted. And I think, you know, we fail to realize that everybody else thinks their lenses are clear. And, you know, I think, and I'll put myself in this, is I forget that people are scared. People are angry, and that fear and that anger gets in the way of reason, gets in the way of all of us taking off our lenses. So I think that's a good takeaway.
And I think, Johannes, back to your question, I think that, you know, some of the people from Florida, from the episode in Florida, who have become very active, had said there were people who thought they sold out because they supported things like gun checks and all those kinds of things and didn't say get rid of it. But again, that is looking on the continuum and trying to say there must be some things that we do agree on, and let's get those out of the way and do the next thing. I've been glad to see that now there's an emphasis on locking guns. Just within the last week or so, 2 kids have been killed. The most recent, yesterday or the day before, a 3-year-old killed a 2-year-old with an unlocked loaded gun in northern Kentucky. So, and the second child had been killed within the week by a gun that was not secured. And so we need to find those things on the continuum where we do agree and get those taken care of. It may not be that we're going to get rid of all AR-15, whatever they are, tomorrow. But we can chip away at what we do agree on or what we can agree on.
Hold on, maybe go first. Yes, dear, we know that.
That's okay. We're really glad you do, Nita. Thank you.
Well, vision, when you speak of looking, vision, whatever. About a year ago, I had the idea of when I'm walking, make eye contact with everybody that you walk across. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, and if I do make eye contact, I nod and even say hello. But I bet you half of the people, they just don't or can't or won't make eye contact. So it's kind of interesting observation.
The good news is you have. It's changed you.
Well, everything starts with you, actually. No, I didn't mean that the way you took it. But.
Thank you. I will tell you that what I find in response to what you said is, I think people are afraid to look the other person in the eye because they don't know what's on the mind of that individual, what they're dealing with, what they're thinking about, who they are aligned with, and they're wearing glasses that look at you and think, well, based upon what you're wearing and how old you are and the color of your skin, that you must think this way. Well, the response basically in my head is, how can you know what's going on inside of my head until we sit and have a dialogue?
How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Right. And Tom is really good about that with the fear. Back here, please. Thank you. And Tom talked about that fear. I think that's it.
Hey, everybody.
Good. Good, thank you. We're glad to hear from you.
I just, as someone who, obviously, this is my first time here, and I just wanted to tell you that I appreciated your talk so much. It was so eloquent and brought up so many good points, and it reminded me of how, at least I need to be reminded, we live in Lebanon, if you know anything about that town.
Yes.
Yes. And we are a pretty progressive family, which puts us in the minority there. But we have found so many delightful and loving and beautiful people that if you start talking about our politics, we would, based on society, if we fall into that, would be at war with each other. But it's important, like you said, and it kind of reinforced it for me in this very tense political time, to look for the commonality, and it was a great reminder. And the other thing, just real quick, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time.
You're not, you're not.
But the other thing that I also found very prescient about your talk is that I had a position where I was a therapist to a group of men that were coming out of jail, and they were all sexual, they had sexual crimes in their background, and some were pretty severe. And what I realized is that once I started working with them, they all had intense trauma in their background, very deep trauma, and mental health issues, every single one. And to get past that and look and realize that some of the people that maybe commit the most heinous crimes, actually have humanity and commonality, finding some sort of commonality and empathy for that. And then once you find that, you can start working towards some solutions. And your talk really helped kind of cement that.
Thank you.
So anyways, thank you.
Tom, you may want to talk to Tom after the service, because he works a lot with the Trauma Network here, and with children that are experiencing trauma, and that's, totally right. And I remember the title of the book, but not the person who wrote it, but they did at one point a brain conference, and the title of the book was Ghosts in the Nursery. And that's what happens for those kids. A lot of those are ghosts in their childhood.
Somebody on Zoom? Ruth? Ruth and Jack.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I got Ruth. Go ahead, Ruth. Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on, Ruth.
There she goes. She was just looking for it.
You
You got to find the button.
The previous speaker just way more eloquently than me shared my feelings, but I just want to say I found your talk, as always, amazing and also personally helpful. I tend to look at Trumpers definitely through glasses, and your comments, and especially the information from Think Again, I guess I really should read that book, but it's going to be really helpful to me personally to stop and look at people without the glasses. So I appreciate all the thoughts that you shared.
Thank you, Ruth.
Jack, turn your mic on, Jack.
He can't hear. Jack, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I think I did. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Ann, thanks for a great message. I can always use constant reminders to be a better listener and to try to approach people in the ways you mentioned. Although I have an anecdote I'd like to share that's not quite so encouraging, but first I wanted to ask Ann, have you had the opportunity to engage with your Trump neighbor across the street at all about your differing political beliefs?
No, we don't talk about that. We really just talk about kind of lifetime things that are happening. Yeah.
Well, I heard something from somebody recently, an old friend from the Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church. She writes a lot of letters to the Inquirer, also very progressive lady. She lives in Reading, which has some, from what I could tell, some pretty deep pockets of Trumpism. Maybe some people that travel cross county highway, one house that had all kinds of flags and stuff up, very aggressive looking. I want to talk to her more about this and flesh out the beginning of it, but she wound up having a conversation with a neighbor, I don't know how close of a neighbor, that had Trump signs up and Confederate flags up. And this lady, Pat, she's very good at engaging and challenging people, not in an overly aggressive way. And she had the occasion, she asked them about the Confederate flag they had displayed. And Pat said the lady responded to her rather nastily, "You don't know anything about the meaning of the Confederate flag." So Pat says, "Well, tell me, what is your meaning of your Confederate flag?" And she said, the lady responded, "It's about freedom." And Pat said, "Well, it's not about freedom for Black people, is it?" And the lady's response was, "We're not Black."
Yeah, so her glasses are pretty deep there, I'd say. Yeah, and there are a fair number of people for whom that is absolutely true.
But
Hi, thank you, Ann, for your message. Your story about your neighbor reminded me of my pet sitter, who is a Trumper, or at least was. But at the same time, she's a nature lover and a beautiful gardener. And she is, I've never met anyone who cares for animals like she does. She's taken care of dogs and cats and birds and fish. And she's always been very kind and helpful to me. And yet when I think of her, I can't quite get over the Trump barrier between us. And this message this morning has reminded me that I need to think again.
And
So-
I think there also, it is, we need to say, these are people who happen to vote for and believe in Trump. And I too have a lot of difficulty. I believe in truth, and that becomes a little hard for me. Or I value truth, I'm sorry.
It's almost a sense of cognitive dissonance. Don't you feel that? Like, you're saying this person cares so much about the environment, but then supports a candidate who's anti-environment. So it's hard sometimes to separate that. There is that cognitive dissonance kind of thing. I wonder how
There seems to be more dissonance for me than from them.
more. Yeah. They don't see their own cognitive how these things don't fit.
Right.
Yeah, or they don't want to because it's
Or they
uncomfortable.
put on the
Yeah.
super glue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lindsay's next.
And I think time for just Lindsay and Sue.
I just wanted to thank you, Ann, that was wonderful, but also to draw the parallel from the things you said today to one of the words that's often thrown around that I don't think people necessarily understand kind of the context within which it can help us, and that is bipartisan. We talk about the bipartisan infrastructure bill and a bipartisan solution, and then there are people who say, I don't care, we're not going to make a solution, so we have a campaign issue. So there's a spectrum there, but having been in the room listening to bipartisan solution negotiations, there are three things that are really important. One is nobody wins, and so everybody walks away frustrated every time. And when we finally come to a solution, it's hilarious because everybody's been scoffing about what a disaster it is, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, well, we're done. Okay, that's what we want. And so that's the one thing, is nobody wins 100%. The second thing is that sometimes if it's something they feel so strongly about, despite the fact that they could be totally off the reservation of wanting to work with anybody at all, that issue will bring them to the table. And that's one of the things that's happened this time around on the solution they're working on now. And so lowering the vitriol, and any chance you have to say, you know, nobody gets everything, but we need to make concessions to get to where we know generally we need to be. And helping them understand the nature of bipartisan negotiations at all. And the third thing is that it takes an unbelievable amount of skill to shut your mouth when you don't like where it's going. And the one thing that is, I had a chance to work with President Biden when he was a senator, and he has always been particularly good at shutting his mouth. And so we're not going to like the outcome. We're not going to like a lot of the things that come out of these things, but the only way we make incremental progress going forward is shutting our mouth.
Well, there's a wonderful book, if you haven't read it, on the, it's Getting to Yes. It's called Getting to Yes, and it's the Harvard negotiation, which is, if you haven't read that book, that's a really good book on how do you get to yes in those difficult situations.
One very quick comment. I was late as always, but one of the first things I heard was when you first meet someone, don't talk at them, invite them to dance. That's going to stick with me, and it's because it's a way to find people and find the things that are in common. Right. And just, again, shut your mouth and play or dance.
Right. Seek understanding.
I always ask the first thing I see somebody that I know well is, how's the children, how's your family, you know, to bring the level down as low as you can get it.
Now, Sue, did you have something to say?
No, that was, we have two Sues. I thought
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, and I'm very sincere about thanking you for your wisdom and insights. And I was joking about sometimes not asking for it.
No, I wasn't.
Just a brief comment on something that Jeff said, and our visitor, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Rochelle.
Rochelle, I'm sorry, Rochelle. You know, I think that was kind of the message that we had on our MLK service 2 weeks ago was, you know, as Jeff said, there's a process of othering when we see somebody else, and the other is somebody that's different, and often those differences we see as deficits. And, you know, I think the message from MLK's teaching is looking, as Rochelle said, that are looking for our common humanity, and if that's the first thing we look for, if those are the glasses, what are our common humanities, we're better off. Okay, we come to a time in the service now, our offering, where we share not only with our wisdom with each other, but we also share some resources to keep the lights on in this place. And we do ask, as guests here, please let the basket pass you by. Your presence here is the gift that we really need. So thank you for being here, and let it pass by. And Michael, one of my favorite songs, so thanks for sharing this.
I'm going to shut my mouth and play. Come gather around people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Come riders, come prophesize with your pen. And keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will later to win. For the times they are a-changing. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls. For the times, they are a-changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand. For the times, they are a-changing. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last. For the times, they are a-changing. Times, they are a-changing.
As always, Michael, thank you. Greatly appreciated. Now we come to a time in our service and channeling our friend Jack online. When shared, our joys are brightened and our burdens are lightened when we share with each other. So it's time to share our joys and sorrows. Linda?
Thank you. First, a joy. It's wonderful to see Ginny and Pete back in church again. I'm so glad you're feeling well enough to come back. And a concern is that Mary Lou has COVID.
Oh.
So that's really scary. And I was told Jack and Val have it too. If that's, yep, she's nodding her head. So I'm concerned for all of you who are ill, and especially Mary Lou. Thanks.
We had the passing of an era in our family this week. John's mother-in-law, Gloria Wolvis, passed at 94. And so we're heading up to South Bend for the funeral. But she was Merle's mom, John's ex-wife. But we early on realized where she fell in the world when she told John that before he got any further into this relationship, he needed to meet me. She needed to meet me and approve before we went forward. So I was met and thankfully approved. So, and then we also lost my son-in-law's brother, who's been spent his life in group homes as being very physically and mentally handicapped, but just a delightful, cheerful fellow. But he is definitely in a better place. But it's been a long 10 days.
Jack, do you want to share?
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
We're okay with our COVID. It's somewhat of a mild cold, but it's kept us away this morning, and this is the first time since pandemic days when we weren't meeting at all. It's the first time I've done the service via Zoom, and it's okay, but it's not as good as being there.
We miss you guys.
Betsy?
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your thoughts and prayers and best wishes for Mark. The good news is that he's home. I brought him home yesterday. On Friday, they said he could come home. Then Friday evening, they said he couldn't. And then Saturday, he called me and said he could. So we're happy to have him home. And for those of you who have had heart surgery, you know that you have to have something against your chest in case you cough or sneeze, so that you don't, strain the stitches in your chest. Well, he's got a little stuffed bear that he has named, based on a suggestion from the nurse, Chester, because it goes against his chest.
Chester.
And he was wondering what people thought as he drove home, this grown man with this bear to his chest, which he has to keep under a seatbelt. So that was fun. We wonder how many people noticed that. But thank you again for all your support. I appreciate it.
Carolyn?
So Jeff and I have been here sporadically. I figure I should give you an update. I am completely done with all treatment. Hair's growing back, and I've had a scan that was clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys could keep my sister in your thoughts. She's battling her 4th primary cancer right now. She's had surgery, she's home, she's probably going to have radiation, and then we'll see.
Carolyn, we're glad to hear your news. Suzanne?
We're on a theme here. I want to thank, excuse me. I want to thank everybody who's asked me about my sister Ruth and how she's doing. Her spirits are good, and she is going into her surgery for bladder cancer on Tuesday of this week. So we will be very happy if everybody sends good thoughts and prayers and whatever good vibrations you can send her way. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got one. I see as good news. I know you probably think this is weird. Nikki Haley's showing in the New Hampshire primary. And I think it's relevant to the talk because when I listen to her, I think about values. Even though she's of the other persuasion, party, whatever, I think she's honest. That's a value. I think I could trust her integrity and ethics, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't look at her as a Republican. I looked at her as a person versus you-know-who. Okay. I gave grades for 52 years at the university. One candidate's never gotten anything but an F, for failure. F is for failure. So, but I think it's good news. I think there might be a glimmer of hope. We've got to trust the electorate, people. That's
Lindsay
all
is
we got.
about to congratulate you on your bipartisanship, so thank you. Now, if you'll rise as you are willing and able, we're going to have our closing hymn, One More Step, number 168. And I think be mindful of the words that, instead of just thinking about these issues, we can take one more step, whether Jeff reminds us, just as we meet somebody, is seeing their common humanity and acknowledging that. And let's share this song. So, Michael?
Stand and sing with me, guys. One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone will take one more step. One more, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one. One more sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Then the closing words are by Daryl Davis. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Amen. Please join us in the Quimby room. Follow the crowd. Cheryl, thank you for the soup. We're looking forward to your Superwoman creation. And please join us, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Thank you for coming.